Hello there. My name is Michael Wolf. I'm CEO of a company called Bottom Line Analytics. As the name of the company might imply, our mission is to help improve the bottom line results, business results of our clients, whether it's profitability or revenue. Today, we want to share with you a story. This story comes from one of our clients who's given us permission. That client is the Florida Lottery. The proposition that we're going to be looking at today is how to improve or how to turbocharge your marketing investments without spending any more money on marketing. Sounds a little bit preposterous, but we're going to go through a process to show you how the Florida Lottery did exactly this. So we're talking about process here. Let's go and think about your marketing effectiveness and how we go about building these predictive analytic models for measuring the effectiveness of your marketing and advertising. This is a 5-step process. Now, we've discovered this process, and this process will get you tangible and positive revenue results. It's not an if or a maybe, but will. If you follow this process, and if you do the recommendations on how to spend your money coming from this analytic modeling exercise. So what are these 5 steps? The 5 steps start with organizing. This is usually, think of, we're going to be using lots of data. We're going to get data from different sources, and we're going to need to clean the data and get it ready to do to build a predictive model which predicts revenue or sales. So that's the organization phase, is to acquire and prepare the data. The second phase is called measurement and attribution, where we build this model, we validate the model, and then we go in and look for insights. Those insights might be the valuation of marketing and advertising, how much of your revenue is due to these factors. It might be what's driving growth in your enterprise among these various drivers. But it also is going to be focused on, of all of the marketing and advertising, paid marketing activities that your company is engaged in, what's working and what's not working. Then we kind of evolve to another stage, stage 3, which we call monetization. So we can ascribe some revenue to marketing from stage 2, but stage 3 goes beyond that and looks at return on investment. Why do we do this? Because frankly, our chief marketing officer on an annual basis needs to go and justify a budget to the CEO and the chief financial officer to get their approval to spend the money that they think they need in order to do effective marketing. So that's stage 3. Stage 4 is what we call the Grady train stage. This is where we see the benefits of the exercise. And we do that through a process called mathematical optimization. So from our model and all the way back to our measurement and attribution stage, we derive our insights by taking the model and building a simulation tool. That simulation tool will enable us to go in and increase or decrease any of the drivers of demand for the lottery and see, based upon the model, whether revenue or sales go up or down. That simulator becomes the target of the optimization exercise. So since we've monetized all of our paid advertising and promotion activity, and we've added all of that up, I think in the year that we are looking at, the Florida Lottery spent about $33.4 million on marketing and advertising. So we just tell the program to keep that constant because we're not interested at this point in time of increasing the budget whatsoever. But then we just optimize that data by simply reallocating the dollars that we have spent from the less productive things to the more productive things. And to do that to the point where it actually maximizes the revenue that we could expect from our paid marketing activities. And that revenue kind of is like a dividend. So this is where we get the gravy. And we'll see how much more revenue that you can squeeze out of your marketing budget and how the benefit of doing this exercise itself rests in this particular phase. And then sometime later, maybe into the next year that we do the model, there's what we call an assessment. We do an audit of what activities that we've recommended from the prior exercise that the lottery has executed in the marketplace. And then we generally measure the impact, the actual effect of all of those things. And that number, there'll be a certain amount of revenue associated with it. We subtract out our original revenue and find out what is the benefit of this marketing effectiveness modeling exercise. I've done this work for going on 29 years. I think I've done over 250 of these kind of marketing models. And generally what I find is about a 10-to-1 ratio. $10 of benefit for $1 of cost of what it costs to conduct the exercise. And then just here's a little perspective of I have on our company and my personal experience in this area, which I am very passionate about. All of our successes are based on stories that we create from the work that we do. And this is the story of the Florida Lottery that we've worked with since 2018. So start with organization. Here we visualize, we call them the architecture or blueprint of the model. The colored boxes on the left are data inputs. These are the variables or the predictors in the model that are directly linked and affect the outcome of the model, which is weekly Florida Lottery sales, not just for the total statewide business, but all the way down to individual cities and districts, 9 of them across Florida. The colored boxes in the upper left represent the marketing drivers, the paid marketing drivers, including promotion, point of sale material promotion, materials that go inside the store, convenience store in most cases. Convenience stores are the big retailers for lottery tickets. And then you have all of the different forms of advertising and all of the attributes of those ads. This includes digital advertising, and radio advertising, and television advertising, and all other paid in-store advertising and promotional efforts. The colored boxes in the lower left are what we call the non-marketing drivers. They include the commissions that we pay to the lottery retailers, the size of the available jackpots from the various lottery games. The higher the jackpots, the higher the sales. The number of retailers authorized to sell the lottery tickets, new game launches, and external measure of the health of the economy in Florida. All of these factors affect the week-to-week revenue of the Florida lottery. Now, when we talk about our marketing and promotion and advertising data, we are going to be examining 547 different ads and promotions over a 12-month period of time. That's a very large number. So we're playing with lots of a good sized amount of data, over 2 million records. Okay, so our next step is the measurement and attribution. This is where our major insights are coming from. But the first task at hand in our measurement is to simply look at the model in aggregate. So we basically sum up the model over time. What you see is the red line here. That's what the model predicts would happen with the activities going on during these weeks during the year. And then at the end, we withhold a certain amount of data from the model in order to see how well our model forecasts periods of time that it had no prior knowledge. So the blue line represents actual sales, and the statistics below tell us how good of a fit the model is relative to actual sales. 97% is really good. Our holdout fit is about 90%, and our average error is plus or minus 1.3%. So we start off here because we need to establish some believability and credibility in the exercise. Without that, whatever we're going to do is not going to feel like there's a reason to do it. So whatever we're going to recommend, we want our recommendations to have credibility. The next thing that we do is we look at an evaluation exercise. The big pie here is simply the annual 2021 revenue of the Florida lottery. And the gray area represents that portion of that revenue, 36%, which is incremental as a result of all of the marketing and non-marketing drivers that's in the model, represented by these colored hash in this box here. So if you want to look at what it means technically, so we divide advertising into two buckets. What we call the short-term effect of advertising, which is we run ads, we get an immediate lift in sales, or the long-term effect of advertising, which tends to build the business over a longer time horizon. So what do you want to think about it in terms of marketing? The short-term effect is more customer acquisition, growth, sales acquisition focused, whereas the gray bar, the 4%, is more focused on retention, retaining customers, getting to come and buy more over time. So this is 15%. So 15% of the $9 billion in revenue is due to the advertising, paid advertising. And then we have the other factors, the non-marketing drivers. The big one here is the economy, which is the gold bar there, 10%. So more than half of the incremental volume is either due to the economy or to advertising itself. And then the other factors are also shown there. The second thing that we want to ask ourselves is what is driving the year-over-year growth in the business. So the overall sales for the year was up by about 3%. So we find that some factors are negative, that's the orange bars, and some factors were positive. Unfortunately, the positive drivers were greater than the negative drivers. So we get net positive growth here. Uh, the economy is the number one driver of growth year over year in 2021, which is 2022. So 2.8% of the growth, the total growth of the enterprise is coming from the economy, 2.3% from jackpots, and then we see paid media is 0.4%, new game launches 1.2%. You'll notice the biggest negative factor over there was baseline. Now, baseline is not a variable in the model. It is after we attribute revenue to all of the things that are in the model, and then we take actual sales minus the sum of those attributed revenue, we get something left over that we call the base or baseline. This can go up or down year over year, but it's not a variable itself. So this declined 2.4%. So when something is of this magnitude, there's probably something we didn't account for in the model that's probably explaining this. When we dug into this area, the one thing that we found out is that there's been considerable inflation, price increases, and the cost of advertising has gone up. So this was the major driver, we believe, of this negative effect. The third area we looked at is to ask the question, how responsive are these business drivers and marketing factors to driving revenue? So this amounts to looking at, this is the dark line is total advertising. So this is just going to show the sales impact of increasing advertising between a range of 0 and $80 million. And in fact, 33.3 million right here represents the current level of spending. Now you'll notice that this line is not a perfectly flat line. There's some curvature to that. That curvature is evidence of what we call diminishing returns. So what this means is a given $10 million increase at a high level is not going to yield as much revenue as a $10 million increase at a very low level of spending. So, and then what we do to overlay this is to give you an idea of the profitability of this advertising at different spending levels. This happens to be done on a revenue per dollar spend basis. And you notice it's on a different scale to the right. So if we're looking at 33.3 million, we get $10.28 profit for every dollar that is being spent on marketing for the Florida Lottery. That means that their marketing very profitable, very profitable. $10 for every dollar spent. My charger goes to fund state education in the state of Florida. So we can see that the profit, the incremental profit per dollar goes down, the spending goes up, but still huge and attractive profit even at those levels of spending. So this will tell you how much more you can spend profitably. And there is no unprofitable advertising anywhere on this chart. Now we can look at other curves for other things. This happens to show on the horizontal jackpots. So a $1 billion jackpot, $1.5 billion jackpot. So as jackpot levels increase, so do sales. However, what you find is that very high jackpots, this represents two big jackpot games, Mega Millions and Powerball. So when those two are generally go together, their jackpots increase or decrease together. So when both of them are $1 billion, So the total sum of those is $2 billion. The higher levels of jackpot are really not going to do much for sales. So the diminishing returns here is more extreme than the sales data that we found, that we showed you on the total advertising chart. Monetization. Every year, the executive director and the head of marketing of the Florida Lottery submits budget requests. And that budget needs to be signed off by a board of directors. On that board of directors is the governor of the state. So basically, they try to sell the reason for their budget request to these individuals who need to give them approval in order that they could go out and spend the money. If you look at this table, which the governor usually sees every year, we find some of the assessments of the return on their marketing dollars. So in fiscal 22 versus fiscal 21, their total revenue went from about 9 billion to 9.3 billion, an increase of about $300 million. Their revenue from paid marketing, advertising and promotion, in other words, went from 1294 to 1346. Their spending went from 34.8 million to 33.4 million. So their spending actually declined, but the revenue from their marketing actually increased and their sales increased. So as you can see, the Florida Lottery is becoming more efficient and effective in how they're spending this money. Now, from all of this, there is a profit that occurs after all expenses. So 343 million is what that profit is, and this is the money from their advertising efforts that goes directly to state education. So if we look at the key statistics, key performance indicators here, we have the revenue generated for every dollar spent is $4.31, which is about an 8% increase from the prior year. The profit per dollar is $10.28. $10.28 profit for each dollar versus $9.49 last year. Also, an increase of about 8%. So, the Florida Lottery has been increasing their returns on marketing for the years that bottom line has been engaged with them. So our next phase is to look at optimization. So in this optimization chart, what you see in the center is the proportion of all marketing that's spent on the individual activities, point of sale, promotion, Hispanic and non-Hispanic television, and so on. All of this adding up to $33.4 million. Now, what you see on the left is the revenue driven from each of these marketing or advertising channels. So you can see in the green here, this is English language television, which yields a pretty much higher share, higher than fair share revenue generated for compared to the proportion of the budget. Some things like out of home or outdoor advertising is somewhat lower than its fair share. So what we're going to do is do mathematical optimization, where we tell the computer to the algorithm to hold total spending the same. We're not interested in increasing the budget here, and simply at a detailed level reallocate dollars from the low productive activities to the higher productive activities. And this ends up with an aggregation by media channel of a recommendation of how to spend the money. So we'll take point of sale down by 6%. We'll take the Spanish-speaking television up by 5%, so on and so forth. So this is the plan, or the aggregate recommendation that we submit to the lottery. But the real plan that we look at, because of those 500 and some individual ads that we're measuring. So we're measuring the current spending, the optimal spending, and the change in spending that we're recommending. And this happens to be the digital advertising. You can see the ads for the different lottery games. So it goes into this amount of detail, and this detail becomes the essence of our recommendation to them. So another question is, when we go back to our initial optimization, once we do this, we get a dividend. So it's maximizing revenue subject to keeping just reallocating the dollars. What are you getting by reallocating the dollars? Well, in this case, 5% increase in their revenue. So 5% more growth, which amounts to about $500 million in additional revenue. So how do we know how we get the benefit of this optimization exercise? So you see all of the individual ads here along the horizontal, and we're going to start with number one, the most effective ad, 474, the least effective ad, and we accumulate the revenue generated by these levels of ads being executed. So, and then we also trace the concurrent spending involved at each point in time. So what this chart tells you is that 75% of the revenue from advertising is being driven by ads representing just 16% of the marketing budget. So we call this Pareto's rule, or something called the 80-20 rule, where fewer ads are driving a higher proportion of the business. We can go all the way to the end here to where the revenue hits 100%, where there's no more gain to be made. And we find that that's just 88% of the budget. So if we want to understand an opportunity, we take 100 minus 88, which is 12%. 12% of their spending, or $4 million worth of spending, generated nothing, zero revenue. This is total wasted spend. So if you understand the level of wasted spend, which is immediate savings, and if you can move this blue chart to more closely look like the red line chart, you're going to be more effective. You're going to actually drive more revenue per dollar from your advertising. And that's basically how this works. All right, so our next thing to look at is the assessment phase. So sometime later, when all of this information actually occurred, we'll collect another set of data and we'll determine what did they do that we recommended to them, and what kind of revenue gain did result from that. So we're essentially going to get a return on investment from doing the modeling itself. So what is the big main story here? And it's really kind of an amazing story. We started engaging with them in the second half of 2018. We're now into our 5th year with them. At the time that we were doing this, the Florida Lottery was a $6.2 billion enterprise. In their fiscal year 2023, which ends Saturday, they will likely be a $10 billion enterprise. So over this time, this would tell you that they've added almost $4 billion in revenue, which is a lot of money. Our marketing effectiveness analytics, we can trace that it actually helped them double their annual growth rate from 2018 to the present versus the prior 4 to 5 years before we were engaged with them. And they were able to build, in 2018, they were the third largest state lottery in the US in terms of revenue. At the end of 2021, they became the #1 lottery in terms of revenue and remain so today. This additional growth from this period of time, from all of those factors that are in our model, amounted to $3.2 billion. And they achieved this by simply spending more on things that were proven to work and not wasting their money on unproductive things. So they really did a good job, not tipping the hat to the lottery and to their agency. They also gained these results, and this is the amazing thing. They gained these results without adding $1 to their marketing budget. Here's the sales over a longer period of time. So engaging them in 2018 to the present, you can see the size of the gold in the red. The blue bar is sales in the prior year, and the gold bar is the increase in sales from the prior year. So you can see that the eyeballs is the December 2020, that the size of the gold bars were larger in these years from 2018 to the years prior to 2018. If you wanted to look at their return on investment, the revenue per dollar spent went from $14.84 to over almost $39 per dollar spent. And then their profit went from $3.57 to almost $10 in four periods of time, more than doubled. So this is really a great success story that we're very pleased that we participated in. If you look at the ranking of the lotteries, here's where they were in 2018, and here's where they ended up in 2021 and are still #1. Here is a written comment, testimonial from the head of marketing at the Florida Lottery. This is just a very brief biography, my educational background, the client side companies that I've worked with, from the Kellogg cereal company to Coca-Cola, the companies that I've done consulting with, from an ad agency where I was basically doing consulting on the agencies, for the agency's benefit, doing this kind of work. We've worked with companies, smaller entities like the Bronx Zoo or the Patriots Point Museum, to large companies like McDonald's and Coca-Cola, and Starbucks and Capital One banks, all different types of businesses where this is applied and so successfully. I want to thank you for your time, and my personal benefit from doing this work is the helping the clients drive better performance in their business. Now, if you think about this, how this applies to you, I'd like to invite you to a one-on-one conference, and you can do this by clicking there or contacting me on my email. We'll set up a conference call. No selling going on here. We're just going to try to understand and learn from you what your unique situation is, what your challenges are, what we think your opportunities are, and maybe how this could apply to your business, and you can perhaps benefit from that. But not a selling time. I want to thank you for your time, and we will hope to see you soon.